Was it in the pay, log him? Or
Yeah,
Democrat
it's a Democrat Gazette. It made it sound like that we violated the law by naming that thing. We didn't.
Thank you, thank you.
She's gone to her meeting. Oh, Andy's gone too. Andy gone too tonight.
He had eye surgery. She was, David's gonna be late, but he's gonna be here. Car. We'll go ahead and start. We'll wait till Theo gets back.
Yep.
We'll wait on Theo to get back.
They would beg to differ, I'm sure. Well, you've been, when is the new road gonna open up?
What?
Or Salem, when is it gonna open up?
The new road?
Totally.
Open today.
Did it open today? I've been every
I
day
sent you an email.
I have been so busy, I've not even checked any emails today.
Melissa, I asked Melissa, that yesterday was her first day to actually be retired. She had grandkids all week.
Oh.
Nighttime.
That's what she's,
We got Spencer 2 nights.
and that's what it's gonna be.
2 nights. She's gone tomorrow, and then we have Knox for 2 nights. 2 days and 2 nights.
Welcome to
And then
return.
Sam, she may have to fly out and check on Sam. He's pretty sick. You know, he got Lyme's disease. Well, now they think that it spread to his brain. Bacterial infection in his brain. He's got one side of his face drooping, and
That's dangerous.
yeah, it's dangerous. They did a spinal tap on him. They're supposed to get the results in. If it comes back positive, she's gonna fly out.
Well, fly him down here and tell him,
They have done.
will you take care of him? Hey, I'm not gonna argue that. Wow, gosh, I hope not. Oh, it's always something.
Good evening, everyone. We'll call this committee meeting to order. Tonight's just informational for the council, and we will take comments from the public if you would like to speak. But there's been some questions about the Phoenix recovery. And so that being said, I will turn it over to the city attorney, and then we have the police chief and Gordon Ball here also who can answer questions. Mr. Clausen.
Yeah, Chief, Gordon, y'all want to get close in case we have some questions and stuff? I think there's been some issues that have popped up. I think this has kind of been an ongoing discussion for a couple of years now. So just kind of wanted to be available to answer any questions or concerns that y'all may have and kind of let you know where we're at. We drafted a letter recently to Phoenix to let them know they're out of compliance with the ordinance and they had 30 days to become compliant, I guess, with some of the provisions that were listed in the ordinance when we changed the zoning. And there was a response back that that basically they had filed complaints with some federal housing authority agencies, and with their position is basically that our ordinance and the requirements specifically are prohibitions against any violent felons. I think the language of the ordinance is violent offenders, sex offenders, those with robbery offenses or gun convictions wouldn't be allowed in the transitional housing of Phoenix recovery. We've had some discussions back and forth. Mr. Bell had his attorney draft a kind of an opinion letter to me, stating kind of their position on the ordinance, and which I respectfully disagree with. And so that's kind of where we stand at this point. So we're in the position to follow up with our letter that was written almost 3 weeks ago now. And again, no action will be taken tonight, but that's kind of the course of action that had been determined based on the violations, or what we see or determined the violations to be of the ordinance. Because it's been brought to our attention that there were several residents that were living there in violation because they had some charges either currently that they were serving time for or being paroled for, or had in their criminal background checks or their criminal histories that would have violated the ordinance. So I don't know exactly where y'all want to start or what you want me to touch on, but that's kind of where we're at right now. We do know, of course, about the conditional use permit. They pulled the request for the conditional use of the treatment facility part of it. So we're just strictly dealing with the DCC transitional housing unit, basically, in essence, is what it is. So those that, and just for informational purposes, I mean, you all pretty much all already know this, but maybe for the public. So once people have become eligible for parole, they serve their portion of the sentence is required, and then figuring out when they're parole eligible is almost impossible to determine. But basically, they're parole eligible. They have to go back into society, and transitional housing is one way they can do that. So they would go in these particular places. They'd be given resources, transportation to jobs or education or things like that. It helps them get kind of reacclimated to the community. They don't necessarily have to be from this area, but they can be placed in transitional housing facilities like this for that reentry.
And they can stay here after they're released?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the specifics on how Phoenix does that. I think that now they have the ability to stay after that period of time. And I think there was some changes that occurred after we approved this ordinance, and it's really not necessarily relevant, but I think that there was periods of time in which they could stay in these transitional facilities, and that had been extended. So I think they can stay maybe 90 or 120 days versus 60 is what it originally was. And I maybe get my numbers off, but it kind of goes in months like that, but they extended it out.
Did that have to be approved through us in order to make that change?
I don't think that it did. I think that's more DCC regulations for the most part. All we did was in essence classify it and allow that use for that particular area. And so how long they can stay and things like that, really, in my opinion, is not necessarily concern, only whether they were in compliance with the ordinance and as this council approved.
So where do we go from here as far as if they're not in compliance with the ordinance?
What recourse?
What
What
do we
options
do?
do we have?
Write them up? What do we do in order to?
Well, that's what we can kind of talk about. I mean, our law enforcement has a really good working relationship with probation parole, who supervises the individuals that are living there. As far as the city, what we can do is if they're in violation of the ordinance, we can issue citations for every day that there's a violation. So that's one option I think that we have.
So is that fining? Is there
Yeah.
fines associated with that? Can it be shut down?
Well, basically, I think the police powers that we have to issue citations and things could in essence shut them down because it would make it financially unfeasible for them to remain open unless they become compliant.
I know, Matt Bell wrote that letter about being Fair Housing Act and all this stuff, that I felt like from his standpoint, and maybe this is just me, that it's like, well, you're not going to be able to shut us down. I kind of got that gist from him in that email that it's just like,
Yeah.
can't do that.
You're going to have to take us to court.
Yeah, I mean, that's another option that we may have, seek injunctive relief of some sort, any kind of other civil remedies that would be available to us. I think in essence what their position is that the way that they say that it violates some of these housing acts are, in essence, the folks that are there have some sort of addiction issues that they're dealing with.
Disability issue?
So they're classified under the Americans with Disabilities Act as disabled, and that is true. As far as if you have an addiction issue, you're classified as disabled for many, many purposes, right? What I would say is that the restrictions that we put in the ordinance don't have anything to do with addiction issues. I mean, first of all, they're not being treated there for addiction issues. One of the conditions in the ordinance that he hasn't brought up is you can't have any kind of counseling or drug treatment services in that particular facility. It is a transitional facility. They are drug-free, but that's part of the requirements of
you know,
Department of
parole.
Community Corrections, and so they're subject to drug screens and random searches and things like that. I'm not gonna get into all the specifics of the ADA and whether they're currently using and whether that kicks them out of having a disability and some things, but anyway, that's one argument that he's made, and I think that's in his letter, and one of his things that his attorney's letter kind of touches on. And without getting into a lot of legal argument, I respectfully disagree. I don't think that if that were the case, I don't think that was the goal of this council at all. I think that it was, well, first of all, let's back up a little bit. When we were putting all this together and was brought to this body's attention as to what kind of facility he was running and the request for rezoning so he could continue to operate, because he was operating the facility in essence without, permission and in violation of the current zoning that was there, if I remember correctly. And it's been several years since we've addressed the initial issue. And part of the reason I think that this council approved and the Planning Commission recommended for approval is because of the multiple community meetings that they had that Mr. Bell had to continue to operate the facility, and most of these restrictions, if not all of them, were his idea, if I remember right. I think if you look back at the minutes that were provided in the packet, and if you look on their website even now, it says that they don't take any violent offenders or any sex offenders. Sex offenders by law won't be allowed because of the current statutes involving sex offender registration and some other things like that. I think that there was in certain distances of churches and maybe daycares and schools that won't allow certain sex offenders to be in that area anyway. But that was part, from my understanding and review of the minutes and the meetings that I remember, is those were brought up. As far as the robbery and firearms charges that are specifically mentioned in there, again, the minutes seem to dictate that was his recommendation as well. And then a lot of it was based on community meetings and things to make them feel better about the facility that was being run over there, and again, to ultimately get the approval of this council. And so that's one thing. The other argument, he's kind of got two arguments. The disability factor would be one. The other one is any kind of restriction on those with criminal histories. I think, again, kind of hitting it from a high level, I disagree with that. I mean, I don't see how you can discriminate with anyone with a criminal history when that's exactly what this facility is to take people from the Department of Corrections that clearly have a criminal history and allow them a place to transition
Not
back
that they
in.
have a criminal history.
Right. Now, there is some, there's some language in some of these housing acts that talk about, blanket restrictions, nobody with any kind of criminal conviction in the background can live here. Well, that might be an issue, but that's not what we're talking about. This entire facility is to take people with criminal histories and help them, again, transition back into society under stricter supervision than if they were just out. They're obviously under some kind of supervision with parole, and so we're not saying that if you have a criminal history you can't live here. We're saying that if you have certain offenses you can't, and I'm not real sure that violent offenders or those with robbery charges or any kind of protected class
That's not a big blanket.
I don't feel that it is, and I'm not really convinced by the.
Chief, how do the parole organization that you work closely, how do they feel about the Phoenix House? If you can characterize it appropriately.
I can't really speak on their opinion of it. They obviously make it work. They have a parole officer that is specifically signed, and his job is to get them assigned to that. And if for some reason they get kicked out, then he obviously has to find a place for them to live. And that's right here in Conway somewhere. But for me to speak to what they feel about it, I don't know that I can say that. But just to bring up something that, just to kind of carry over. So one of the questions or one of the selling points that we've always been told is that they're coming here anyway. Of all the residents that are there right now, none of them, zero, have Faulkner County ties. So to me, that's a pretty big deal. You know, it's one thing to help out your own people and try to transition them back into your own city, or getting people that have no ties here whatsoever.
And without kind of that family network and support.
Exactly.
But I was thinking initially that's what we were sold, that it was people from this area, Faulkner County,
Yeah.
you know, to help them, not from
Yeah,
all over the,
I don't remember it
creation.
that way. And even
Don't.
in the
I did.
in the meetings with, in the Pine Street neighborhood, I think he was pretty straightforward about
That it was
they
from
wouldn't
all over the
all be.
state.
Yes, they
Yeah,
could
and we
be.
wouldn't expect-
Yeah, and I don't think we can say, if you don't have a tie to Faulkner County, you
Yeah.
can't live here.
Then
I
know,
mean,
Well, I think that there was discussions about that. I think that, you know, kind of.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
one of those stipulations.
And that wasn't one that was put in there, but I do remember some discussions about that. I think that you know, Phoenix, their hands are tied a little bit. A lot of times if they qualify for placement there, then they're put there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how some of it goes.
And hasn't there been a change, and I don't know if there's even anybody here who can speak to that, kind of a change in the funding for what programs were running at that time versus what funding is available now?
Gordon, you may be able to.
or lost their funding.
Yeah,
There has been some change, and of course, they did do a different kind of housing as well that allowed as an early release. So initially, whenever they were getting it in, they did have a couple of different funding sources, and then DCC, of course, was one of them. I think they also brought up some of the social services as well. But as Phoenix progressed, then they also enhanced it to allow the early release individuals to come out who were classified still as ADC inmates rather than those that were actually out on standard parole.
okay. So
So
it's kind of a different
there
Right.
was
So
some different
this
things
was-
that had
Of
changed.
release.
Again,
Now,
this-
that had gone away.
Yeah, that was something new that happened after the fact, and we had a couple different, there was a couple different discussions about that, but it was interesting the fact that, you know, they're trying to alleviate overcrowding. That's what they're trying to do. So low-risk folks that are still in ADC, they haven't become eligible for parole, but they basically release them to a facility like this, and then there was certain funding based on, you know, the classifications, however ADC classified them, as to how much funding like a Phoenix house would get.
Have there been murders housed there that you know of?
There has been at least one individual that I know of that has had that offense that has resided at that location.
Which is against, wouldn't it be
I would
against
consider
violent
that a
offender?
violent offense. yes.
Exactly. I mean,
What about sexual predators?
As far as what I can remember on the individuals that I've looked at and tracked, there have not been any individuals that I have seen that had the sexual offenses that were residing there, so.
Do they send you all that information when somebody new moves in?
I get a listing because of my relationship with DCC. They will send me out listings to, you know, say, here are the individuals that are paroling to Faulkner County, and there will be those individuals listed in there. It's not something that Phoenix Recovery transmits to us and says, hey, these are the individuals that we have. There's not much of a data exchange between us and Phoenix, unfortunately.
do we get daily calls over there, weekly calls, monthly
Well,
calls?
I
What do we?
I did a rundown of a comparison of stats for the entire Brown subdivision, and then also comparing it to what we've dealt with Phoenix Recovery. And just for an instance, in 2016, thankfully, there were only 11 incidents that had occurred in the entire subdivision, which would include Phoenix Recovery. And of those 11 incidents, 15 charges were filed, and 9 of those charges ended up coming out of Phoenix Recovery. So it had a 60% impact on the calls, the charges. 60% of those were there. And then, of course, there were some that were arrested that were leaving from that area, which could have actually increased those numbers as well. So there is an impact, unfortunately, that Phoenix Recovery does have for that entire area. Just in looking and say the calls for service, they generally run between just half of the calls for the entire subdivision to 1/3 of the percentage of calls for the entire subdivision. So, you know, that does increase, of course, issues and problems for the subdivision.
One of the things that was addressed in the most recent correspondence with Mr. Bell was the fact that they didn't have the capabilities of running criminal background checks. And I think that when he was here before us at some point, that was discussed, and they were going to do that. You can run background checks, either you have to pay for them through the Arkansas State Police, or you could have the folks that would have been, or that file an application, basically fill out a waiver to have their ACIC released to them.
So
They could look.
Department of Community Corrections doesn't share that when they go
So
out
they had the ability
somewhere?
to do it, they just didn't want to pay for it.
Yes, or do the paperwork for the waiver. That was, in my recollection of some of those discussions here, that was discussed, is doing the waivers. And their application ask, what offenses they've been, charged with or convicted of, those sorts of things, so.
Thank you, Chief. Officer Ball. Would anyone from the public like to speak?
There's so much I want to say.
Well, we got time. Just step on up.
Come up to the
You have
podium.
to come up.
If you would, give your name and address, please, for the record.
Fonda Stone, 13 Evergreen, here in Conway. When they started the program, they were a treatment housing facility for drug and alcoholics. They were getting funding from a grant called Access to Recovery. When that block grant ran out of money, when that block grant was no more, then they got the transitional housing license from the state. Part of the requirements for that is to have a 30-day notice to the people in the area, to the city, which he did not do. He just started housing the inmates. I do remember him telling the city council, because it was asked, will most of these people be coming from Faulkner County? And he said yes. I don't know if that ended up in the minutes. I know that it did not end up in any part of the requirement. The Phoenix Recovery Program here is the second highest licensed by one number. They don't put that on the website anymore, but when I looked last year, there are programs that are listed for 24, 36, and I think originally he was licensed for 62, and then it went up. Is it now 126?
It's,
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the intent of this program, if you go to the website for the Arkansas Community Corrections, the intent of this program is good. It is to help, and part of it is to alleviate overcrowded prisons. We know our prisons are overcrowded. But it is also to provide assistance to these men in being able to get jobs, being able to get housing, being able to make that transition with a lot. And if you go to their website, they want community support. They want the community in there mentoring and volunteering and all of this. I don't think that's happened in this town. I don't think this city really knows what's going on. And when Mr. Bell tells you that, oh, we get to sort of pick and choose who we take, Sheila Sharp, who is over the Arkansas Community Corrections, has very clearly said, if you sign up for this program, you take who we send you. And if there is someone that, and I have this right here, if there's someone that the facility can justify reasons they're present, then they have to put it in writing, and they have to have a really good reason for not accepting that person. I mean, you hear one thing and then you hear another thing, And actually, if you call transitional housing, they'll tell you one thing when what's in writing in their directive as laws says something totally different. So I think I would like to know how often they visit, how often their compliance officers visit. I would like to know if after, supposedly after 90 days, if they don't have a job, they're let out. And this very clearly states, at that point, the Department of Corrections is no longer going to pay, and it is Matt Bell's responsibility to take care of this situation. And I don't know what their policy is for helping these people get back home. Do they do that, or do they just kick them out? Do they become, I know that they're a bigger burden on our parole officers. I know
It's on the
I know that
website.
they're a bigger burden on our police officers. Our homeless community has definitely gone up. Our criminals, I think if you talk to police officers and narcotic officers, you find that there is a huge concern about that. And I think the intent of the program is good, but the intent is not being met. And I think who is being hurt the most are the men who are actually being placed in this facility. I have lots and lots, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. I hope that our city can do something. I don't think that everyone in there has an addiction problem, and that should qualify them for housing under a disability. I don't know. I agree with you on that.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Anyone else? Okay, council, do you have any questions?
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
I guess I always said I wasn't gonna say anything, but I was dead set against this from the beginning because I'm the one went over there and found out he was remodeling this place over there without a permit. I had to go to the code enforcement people to get them to go check on this guy. And what he said was, I can do what I want to. And that's what we got, that's what we're dealing with. I told you from the beginning, and now this is what we got.
So are you looking for direction from us about what to do next, or?
Well,
I know we can't vote on anything.
Well, I think basically at this point, and since we're just here kind of for informational purposes only, we've in essence decided to treat it like an ordinance violation. And I guess proceed with it that way. If we have to take any further steps, like I said, these complaints have been filed, and I'm looking into that to see the process of how they're going to follow up on the accusations, if these federal agencies, I guess, in essence, view this as any kind of violation of anyone's rights, and then where we go from there. And I guess at a later date, I'll kind of update you as to where we're at. But at this point, he's been given a date to become compliant, and if not, then code enforcement action will be taken. I think it's important, and Gordon, Chief, these type of facilities I think are very needed, and it wasn't one that we really had in our community, but there was an expectation set, and we're just trying to make sure he lives up to that expectation. So.
It's interesting, David pointed out that they put right on their website that if you've been convicted of violent crimes, firearm charges, robbery, or crimes of any sexual nature, we can't accept you.
That's right.
It's right on their website.
It's there, it's on the application.
that's what they were looking at a while ago.
But it's all in who polices it.
It's on their website.
Well, we could talk about this forever, but we gotta do something eventually. To me, there's at least two things here. If there are any laws being broken there, the police need to deal with that.
Right.
All right? And they can. If we feel they're in violation of our ordinance, then you need to deal with that. Okay? So that's what I would say we're moving towards. Again, if laws are being broken, I assume y'all are taking care of that. You said you had calls for service, we've had charges, we've had convictions, so y'all are dealing with that part of it. If they're not doing what we stated in the ordinance, then we need to address that.
Let me ask you this, if there is a murderer that shows up over there, do we have any authority at all? It's not, we have no recourse as far as Conway PD to do anything about that, is that correct?
Just be a violation of the ordinance like any other
Yeah,
offense that.
and that would be it. I mean, you know, we couldn't do anything else.
And we, David, we can bring code enforcement in on it as well.
Well, and to Chuck's point, these are still human beings, and these are still people in these treatment, and we have to keep that in mind as we
Well, and
think about this
And
process.
again,
too.
what I look at is not necessarily the parolees, okay? I mean, yeah, we're talking
Yeah,
about
they're
the
not the ones
offenses.
doing this. Yeah.
They're going where they're told to go.
right.
Hopefully, you know, they're following the rules when they get there. They're under supervision with DCC, you know, they're subject to random drug screens and that sort of thing. But again, this facility was basically allowed due to a collaborative effort with Mr. Bell and his folks at the time to make the community happy because that's where he owned property. And so, like I said, we're just trying to get what we approved, and it's more the facility. As far as you were saying, we can look at violations of the ordinance, is what we can do. As far as how the facility itself is run, beyond that, that's up to Department of Community Corrections to really enforce whatever policies and procedures are supposed to be following. And I understand that there has been some significant enforcement of that recently due to certain factors, but anyway, so that we're working our way through that. I just wanted to let the council know kind of where we're at, that we are working on it, that we hear the issues and we're trying to address them. I know that y'all have been very, very patient with Phoenix, the administration, the management of it, because this has been an ongoing issue for quite some time. I know that we've brought him before the council on several different occasions and being told a lot of different things, but I think that at least there's about to be some action from the city.
What's their date for compliance?
Mr. Mayor, when did we send that letter? July 21st.
Oh, August 21st.
Yes, you
Or
got
August 20th.
But he didn't act like he did anything wrong. I mean, did he? Did he act like they weren't in compliance with anything?
I think the letter acknowledged that they weren't. His argument is that the ordinance is basically illegal.
I'm saying, you know, he doesn't even think anything's wrong with anything they're doing there.
And I haven't had any direct contact or communication with him in some time. And he was given some notice, but we wanted to get this before the council as soon as possible. He wasn't able to be here, so I hate to get into a lot of that. But anyway, Gordon, is there anything else we didn't talk about?
Stay on top of it.
Steve? Any other questions?
Any other
or-
questions? Okay, I'll meet everybody back here at 6:30. We'll have council meeting. Thank you.
He said it from the beginning, he can do whatever he wants to.
Hey, I didn't vote for it
Every night.
at all.
Would you bow, please? Lord God, we thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed upon this city. We thank you for allowing us to be in the positions we're in. Lord, we just pray your blessings on any decisions that are made. We pray your blessings on Conway and on this great nation. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Garrett is out of pocket tonight, will not be here. Alderman Hawkins had a slight procedure, so he's going to be out of pocket. And who else are we missing?
Whitmore.
Ms. Whitmore is away in training with her.
Isby.
I'm sorry, Miss Isby is out of town in training with her job. Miss Hurd is standing in tonight. Miss Hurd, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Mr. Pruitt?
Here.
Ms. Mill?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
You should have received copies of the July 25th City Council minutes and the July 31st special City Council meetings. Any corrections or changes?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 6-0. Mr. Winningham, you have some good news for us tonight or better news?
Let's take the good news.
Sales tax?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got sales tax figures in today, and it's up a little over 4% again.
Ooh,
So
great.
that's
Yay.
been about the number we've hit, except for last month, which was an anomaly like we talked about when we went over financials. But it's been pretty steady, up 3 to 5% every month. So hopefully
Right.
we'll keep on that track for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Winningham.
Thank you.
Okay, first up on the agenda, we have the Economic Development Committee with a consideration to extend the lease agreement for Snap-on Equipment. Is anyone here from Snap-on Equipment or the Chamber? Okay, what this is, we've had this lease with Snap-on Equipment for some time. It was last extended in September of 2012. They are now asking for a 10-year lease agreement. Normally, it's been 5 years for this property, but if we approve this tonight, it will end in September of 2027.
I make a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Next, we have a report of our standing committee, starting with community development. Mr. Hawkins is not here tonight, so I'm going to try to stand in for him. We have a resolution expressing the willingness of the city of Conway to utilize federal aid surface transportation program funds for an upgrade signal project along Oak Street. And Ms. Jones and Mr. Vinson.
I'm going to hand out y'all a little map that we use for our application. This is an application through MetroPlan, and it's $600,000 grant, $150,000 in matching funds. And this was applied for back in April 25th of 2017, and a huge coordination between our Mayor Castleberry and Mayor Council.
Well, good.
But this will be something I think we're going to share. And Finley's got all the technical.
This grant awards us with an adaptive signal system, which is the same thing that we applied for on Dave Ward Drive, and is under not really construction, it's being implemented right now. Probably will go live around the first of next year. And so, as Ms. Jones said, we have applied for one on Oak Street and were awarded, and in order to move forward with the grant, this MetroPlan requires a resolution from you agreeing to the 20% match, which we anticipate to be around $150,000. We won't be required to pay that until next year at the earliest.
So what will this actually do with these lights along East Oak?
So the best way to describe this is that this is the next level of signal technology. The original signals, as you know, were basically all pre-timed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we figured out how to use detection cameras to allow wasted green time to go from one phase to another phase, that was the next level in signal technology. This allows every signal on the corridor to communicate with one another. and it gets pretty complicated, but there's hundreds of variables in the signal control cabinet, and without this technology, really only a few of them can be changed using a video camera and detection. This uses the cameras to actually count the cars, not just use presence detection, but count the cars and know how many cars are moving down the corridor and change many, many more variables in order to get better efficiency out of the signal. An estimate from the FHWA is that it improves efficiency by about 15 to 20%.
We might see a little difference on East Oak.
I sure hope so.
I do too. It's a nightmare.
I will say when I was hired in 2009, this was the first project Oak Street was the first thing I dedicated my time to. And the first thing I said was, we need to get an adaptive signal system on Oak. And I applied for it back then. And the state pushed back on it and said that we just needed better timing. So I asked them to retime it. And they came back to me and said they had a much better timing plan for me and were ready to implement it, but they needed to take a signal out.
Oh, yeah. And
So
it's
this
like
is the only other option, really.
I make a motion that, what kind of motion do we
We
need for
approve the
this?
resolution.
To approve it, so just for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd, what's the resolution number on this?
This will be R-17.
What'd she say?
39?
39.
Yes, 39.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Next up is consideration to purchase the right-of-way to complete the improvements to Bruce Street, east of Harkrider Street for the Street and Engineering Department. Mr. Vinson.
If you flip about 4 pages forward from the memo, you'll see the map that shows the hatched area that we would like to acquire. The primary reason for this is to get additional right-of-way at the corner to improve the radius for truck turning movements. In addition, we're acquiring 10-foot on the northern boundary, which is the south side of the road. This is an older part of town, and there's a significant discrepancy on the plat. And so we had the surveyor of record who originally platted this, I think almost 40 years ago, do research on it, and he determined that the original survey was slightly incorrect, so we need to get a little more right-of-way on that northern boundary. And so that's what the proposal is for, and the owner has agreed to the purchase price, which was the higher of 2 appraisals. Actually, they were identical. We got 2 appraisals. They were both $3 a square foot.
I make a motion, we approve this purchase of this right-of-way.
We have a motion.
North is to the right.
It goes up over the railroad track.
And this is for the improvement of Bruce Street as it connects to 6th Street and 1st Street as part of the Central Landing roadway network improvements.
Oh, so it's across Harkrider, like if you're coming from UCA.
Yes, it's on the east side of Harkrider, so north is up
So it's
like
like that little
this.
distribution center.
That's correct.
Over there, okay. We were oriented backwards, because I saw
Sorry.
the railroad track, and I thought, no, that's not, yeah, okay.
Got it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of this right-of-way. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mayor,
family.
Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the public service portion of our agenda, and we will start with an ordinance to approve the Public Art Board music and art installation, entering into a MOU for property on Markham Street and appropriate funds. Ms. Beth Wilson Norwood will present for the Public Art Board.
Hi, so you guys all got your proposal, I assume. So this is for a interactive art project that'll go in the corner of the Markham Street. It's a property owned by Spencer Hawks, and I'm forgetting the cross street right now. I believe Pine Street. But this is interactive art project that this artist named Stephen Parker has done one similar in Austin. And this is a, go ahead. I love getting stopped by the train. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm from Conway, so I'm used to it. So, and anyway, so basically what it is, it's all ADA accessible, and people can go up to it and crank the different pedals on these different circles that you see here, and it will create a tone. And he's set this to the blues. I'm not a music person, I'm a visual arts person, but the blues scale. So it'll be a really interesting interactive art project, and because it's in its temporary location, we would like to, it's set to go there for, because this is a spot that Spencer Hawks has leased to us for a handful of years, I believe up to 3 is the minimum right now. So it would be something that he's designed specifically to be able to easily be picked up and moved, hopefully across the street to where the sunken amphitheater will be.
Thank you for your work on this. You know, I know you all do it on a volunteer basis, and I think my only issue is it's not on public property, and that we are going to have to pay to move it later. And so I guess I'm just curious why this was the first thing you picked, and then looked for a different place to put it that we didn't own, when we have, the city owns property all over this.
No, of course. It was just one of these things, this partnership that kind of landed in our lap. Spencer came to us and offered his space. One of the reasons he's interested in, one of the reasons he volunteered his space was because this is going to be an area that's going to be developed soon, and we kind of looked at this as a way to activate the space before there's actually any physical, other than this, infrastructure on.
So did the committee bring in the Parks Department about where it would appropriately fit on the new park property?
No, we did not.
Okay. Because that's where it would ultimately go, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I guess I'm a little concerned about that disconnect too with that.
No, of course.
Any further
wanna-
questions?
Do we need to make, does that conversation need to happen before we approve anything?
Probably
Like,
so.
Make sure that, you know, because I mean, I think we all know Spencer and we know he's a good guy, but.
Yeah, and
Just
it's nothing
Yeah.
about who it is,
Yeah,
or,
nothing
yeah,
at
it's
all
not
like
that.
It's just, we don't, it's not public property. This is public art.
Well, why don't we hold it in, I make a motion to hold in committee
We can
until
do that.
we have other future discussions.
And make sure that we find the appropriate place where it can fit, when we know the park is gonna be done. Make sure delivery happens about that same time and can be incorporated in those plans,
I'm
because.
excited about it. It looks pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it is really, and I don't think the council, I mean, the whole purpose of the Public Art Committee was, that was your charge. So, you know, I'm not gonna say, do I like it, is it pretty, is it not, is it, you know, because that's a taste
A land
opinion.
issue.
Yeah.
And how easy is it to move? And the reason, it's not because I'm worried about money for moving it. It's just, I guess I go back to the person that had the horse in Centennial Valley. And it getting pushed over
Tupped over.
constantly and messed with constantly. So something that we spend this amount of money on, I wouldn't want anyone to be able to come up and do something like
Vandalize it.
that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that would be a real concern.
Okay.
It's 10 feet by about 5 feet, and it's on a steel, rolled steel plate that would be anchored into the ground.
Okay.
He did something similar like this in Austin, and it was actually a movable piece. So he would load it up, and it was smaller. It didn't have near as much space, but he would load it up and like move it throughout this area. You can look at videos on his website as well.
Once it's approved, how long would it take him to make it and deliver it and install it?
It's a 1-year project. So he wants to, and he's also working on an academic year. He teaches at the University of Texas in Austin, or I mean in San Antonio, I'm sorry. So he wants to come for Arts Fest this year and do some public programming, like meeting with people and just seeing what folks are interested in seeing, and mostly looking at the artists that we're going to highlight with those bike, the bike thing. And then fabricate it. He wants to come back a couple of different times, but then fabricate it over the summer and then install it in October of 18.
Okay, so depending on when, and I don't know when the park area is going to be ready in Markham Street. Steve, do you have any sense of when? Okay, so that might push everything back.
Yeah.
I mean, he can still come for Arts Fest, but, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I believe Spencer's leased it for 3 years is the minimum that he's loaned the space to us, so.
It's gonna take him a year to construct it.
Yes, yes, of course.
So, I mean,
But I don't know if our park space
we'll be ready
will be ready
yeah.
in a year.
to start now and be finished in a year. So it may not start till next year, that we can even start installing on that park space.
Yeah, and now that space was not our, the ultimate place that we wanted to put it, and you're right, that's a step that we should have gone through. But we're open to anywhere, just anywhere where people are gathered and people can, because I've seen these kinds of installations in different places, and it's a really cool thing where people get together who've never met each other and start kind of playing and interacting and talking. So anything where there's just folks coming together. And
Do you all have a list of all the property that the city owns?
I don't think we have a
That might be
comprehensive
maybe that's
list. We do
something
have a
that
list of the
Brian or
parks.
Somebody could provide, because I think that will help you with placement of public art. Where can we put this stuff? Where's our right-of-ways? Where's our parks? Where's just other property that we own? So we can make sure that's where the public art's going.
There's been a number of questions today and directed at my office. I would like to clear it up. The Arts Board is funded by voluntary tax and also by $30,000 annually from the A&P Commission. So this is not general fund money.
Money that can't be
patching
used for
potholes.
streets or
Or
anything else.
drainage or- yeah.
Yeah, it can't be used for any other.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and approve the funding of the project so he can get rolling. It sounds like he's ready to roll. We've got a year to determine the location.
But it sounded like he wanted to start installing it.
You said it won't be built for a year.
No, he will fabricate it over the summer in Texas, actually. So
Can
he
he
works.
hold it until we're ready to install it?
Can he? I mean, yes, he can. His initial timeline involves him coming up to communicate with the community and get a better idea on the design, collaborate a little bit with community on the
So he
design.
can meet with the Parks Department about appropriate placement in the actual
Yeah, could we go on and have them
installation
start it?
place.
Yes, yes, he could.
So he's gonna start on it next summer, is that what you're saying?
He'll start fabrication. So he's going to work on the design over the fall and the spring, and then fabricate it over the summer. He has somebody who already does this for him and or helps him with it. And then he'll bring it and install it. So
So what
So
do we
that
need to
could
do
be-
if we want him to go on and?
So we could
The
we could go
design
ahead,
and all
we could
that.
go ahead and fund it tonight and then,
Right,
Yeah.
just amend it to
Get the
where.
location.
Just to, different location.
yeah. And
Yeah, cause it's like,
Well, there's no need for him to come to town if it'll be funded.
Exactly, yeah.
I make a motion, I'll make a motion, we approve the funding with the location to be determined later.
Second.
So modify section 2 of the proposed ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the funding with the amendment to change the
Do we
location.
need to waive the 3 readings first?
yeah, it's an
Make a
ordinance.
motion
Okay.
to waive 3 readings.
second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. I'll take a motion to adopt the ordinance with the change.
David made
I'll
a
make it.
motion
Second.
on,
All
yeah, second.
All right, any further discussion? Ms. Hurd, please call the roll.
So the ordinance 01785, Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes,
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Mel.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Thank you for your
yeah,
time.
thank you.
thank you.
And the last item on your agenda tonight is consideration to approve a bid of an Endeavor robotic system for the Conway PD SWAT team. Chief Spradlin, you're up, sir.
As you know, each of the last 3 years, we've received a federal Homeland Security grant, and it's been for our SWAT team. And before we receive this grant, we have to submit the items that we're going to purchase with the grant. And that has been approved by the Homeland Security Department. One of those items is a robotic system for our SWAT team, and we opened this item up for bids. We only received 1 bid from W.S. Darley, and we would ask that we accept this bid to purchase this robot system.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the bid for a robotic system for Conway PD. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have tonight. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We are adjourned. You did good.
New world record.
That was quick, wasn't it? I got a grandbaby to go see.
I heard that, you can't beat that, man.
Do they open the door?
Yeah.
Cameron Grace.
You heard about Kiara's little boy, big boy.
Was it big?
Oh, was he really? How,
They said, nah, let me get this right, cause I will. Thanks, I was told, I was just correct me.